Hey everyone, welcome to the Current Case Podcast. We're a group of four friends discussing the latest current events as they apply to our everyday lives. From foreign policy to local events, we cover it all as best we can in a manner not restrained by the bias of the big media corporations. We may not always agree with each other on certain topics, but that is what makes it all the more interesting. Being able to sit down and have a civil conversation on even the most controversial topics is a necessity for a better society.
Hello and welcome back to the Current Case Podcast. Today is February 8th. Before we jump into today's episode, please remember to subscribe. About 70% of you guys who are listening are not subscribed, so we always appreciate it. If you guys do subscribe, hit the bell icon as well to get notifications when our next episode has been uploaded. Also, check out the Spotify as well. For today's episode, we do have a guest today. So, Eddie, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me on the podcast. I'm Eddy, 19-year-old, studying in college right now, unemployed. I gotta show some solidarity to my homie Cam. I live in Florida, and I just wanted to preface this entire podcast by saying, despite living in the U.S., I'm not very educated on U.S. politics, so in case I say anything stupid, that's my excuse. I tried getting into politics once, but it was too depressing. I just like looking at funny clips of the old people. So yeah.
I mean, that's pretty fair, Eddie. I don't think anybody actually understands politics all the way up to our president, so don't feel bad about it, I would say.
At least you're not the one making decisions at the top.
Yeah.
At least you can say the word politics without a stutter, unlike someone in the executive branch.
Well, Eddie, I know you said you had a segment you were going to talk about later, right? Wasn't it over sleep therapy?
Yes.
All right, awesome. So we'll be getting into that towards the end of the episode. Of course, it's been a very active week in terms of news this past week and a half, just tons of things going on. So what we're going to start off with today is just a discussion about this Chinese balloon fiasco. So backstory behind it, which I'm sure at this point, basically everybody has heard about it by now, but I think it was on Tuesday of last week is when the Chinese weather balloon, I'm saying this in quotes, weather balloon was first discovered, and I think Montana was the state where it was first located, and it was just floating 60,000 feet in the air. They were like, what is this? China claimed it. They said, hey, it's just a civilian balloon. Just measure weather.
Except I think at first they tried to deny that it was even there in the first place.
Did they? I didn't even see that part. Did they try to deny it?
At first, but once it became too obvious to ignore, that's when they basically started making the claim it was a weather balloon.
Interesting. But it made its way across the United States until it was eventually shot down this past weekend by the F-22. So, and China, of course, was very upset by that, which is kind of strange considering they called it a weather balloon. And they actually said, I saw it today, they want that weather balloon back.
Okay, well, first of all, what does China need to know about the United States weather? And secondly, this is ridiculous. Like, the whole premise of them being pissed off about it is ridiculous. It's like if a burglar broke into your house and you shot them in the kneecap and then they sued you for shooting them. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. I must also state, though, that apparently this isn't the first time that so-called Chinese weather balloons were actually spotted over other countries. I think similar instances have been seen back in 2020 over Japan and I think the Philippines as well. I think there was another spy balloon over Latin America spotted recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still ridiculous to basically try to hide them as weather balloons and then get upset when they get shot down. I mean, personally, I don't know what they were hoping to gain by sending the balloons over the United States.
Either way, I think it was a terrible mistake for President Biden in the way he handled this. We know that it initially entered our airspace off the coast of the Aleutian Islands in Alaska, went through our airspace, through Alaska, from Alaska to Montana through Canadian airspace. And then once it hit Montana, as you said, Jared, that's kind of when we noticed it. But apparently there's some reports coming out that it did have a small amount of explosive devices rigged to it to blow up and get rid of any sensitive information or electronics on board. And that was part of the reason as to why it wasn't shot down over the mainland U.S. However, when it's out in Montana, and you have all the people living there, all the residents, and like, yeah, go ahead and shoot it down. We don't have anything over here. Why let it just float over all these sensitive sites across the U.S.? Mm-hmm. They claimed that it was jammed the whole time, and they were gathering intelligence on it. But just shoot it down. Then you don't have to worry about anything else happening.
Right. It's like, I mean, what are you going to hit in Montana? A bear? That's about it. Well, yeah, mountain, poor bear. It's like, there's plenty of chances.
See, Jared, that's terrible for the environment, so we can't do that.
Oh yeah, but we're going to dump it over the ocean. That's definitely good. Good for the environment.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard like conflicting viewpoints from people on this. Some people seem to think that this was a test of Joe Biden's resolve to do something about it, and other people think it was more of a way for China to test our response, like what kind of equipment we have to respond to this. See what our firepower is. So, what do you guys think of that?
I completely agree with the theory that I think it was a test of our response. I mean, China already has like 1 million spy satellites. I mean, I posted this on TikTok about a Chinese spy balloon over us. That's ironic, by the way. I'm posting it on TikTok all about these Chinese spy balloons. It's like they have 1 million things to spy on us with. It's like a weather balloon's going to be easily spotted in the first place. So I think they probably knew that.
It's probably a test run for something much worse. I think a lot of speculation is towards, some sort of EMP device, because if that goes off around 60,000 feet, about 2/3 of the U.S. would lose power.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like they were flying it over the U.S. with the intention of it maybe drawing attention, though the fact that the Chinese initially tried to deny it does throw some doubt into that as well. It also kind of gives reason to doubt China's point of view on this. My personal belief in this is that this may be, I guess, kind of a retaliation for the fact that in international waters, specifically the South China Sea, the Chinese have been basically building these artificial islands and putting military bases in waters that are basically claimed by other nations. Vietnam, the Philippines, pretty much everybody that has some sort of ties to the South China Sea. And the U.S. has basically been sending its aircraft and ships over them very close by those Chinese bases in the South China Sea to try to make sure that they don't do stupid shit.
Well, then again, everyone knows it's an international airspace.
That's what I was about to get at, because if that's their whole motivation for that, they really need to look into the mirror and say that before they decide to accuse others of doing it, because that's if they try to pull that sort of excuse, it's going to be a false equivalency on their part.
So retaliation for basically us calling them out for what they're doing in the South China Sea, basically.
Yeah, and basically flying our aircraft and sending our ships close to what they think is their territory, even though it's international waters and airspace.
But why send a balloon, though? It's a big question. Why do you think they...
Because it's not easily detectable.
Well, I think the main thing is that the balloon has a much longer range than a typical fixed-wing aircraft. It doesn't need mid-air refueling. It goes much higher. Plus, since it's unmanned, you don't have any risk of crew. Or not too many sensitive electronics are on board. Right. And those that were on board were, as you mentioned before, rigged to self-destruct. Whether or not those actually went off when the balloon was shot down, I don't know.
So, Ashton, with that theory, tell me what you think about this then. I know just today, some U.S. officials have been saying that Chinese spy balloons have been spotted in the skies across various countries, across 5 different continents. So meaning it sounds like they're pretty widespread at the moment. So why do you think China would do that?
I think I did mention before that previously there were similar balloons that went over other countries.
Yes.
But I think what mainly sets this incident apart is that it was the first one that actually provoked a response from the country the balloon flew over.
Right.
I think it has 2 possible motives. One, they send out all these balloons to make it look like they really are trying to get weather data. It's like their plausible deniability bit. It's like, oh, it's over 5 countries. Like, you're not the only one. Like, we're trying to map out these weather systems. So that's their cover. But at the same time, it very well could also be signaling that they are getting ready to gear up for something much more sinister.
Possibly.
Just because China is engaged with the Ukrainians and they're doing their thing over there, Russia's crippling from the inside out based on their housing market, COVID, everything else, and they need a huge distraction. And that sounds like prime time to go start a war somewhere.
I'm not so sure China would stick its neck out on behalf of Russia. Their ties are not as close as you may think.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think Russia really has anything to stand on anymore. It's super clear with Ukraine that, okay, they might have some nukes, but that's it. Yeah. Other than that, conventional, they don't have anything.
Are you saying China would assist them in the war?
Probably not. China has one goal, to be China, and just go out, expand, just do its Chinese stuff, right?
Yeah.
I would be more concerned with the North Koreans, Iran, and the rest of kind of that faction wanting to gang up and do something, especially a strong like joint U.S. strike.
Yeah, but at the same time, if a strike against the U.S. mainland was their goal, they'd have much better chances of success if they were to use a ballistic missile, not a balloon.
Not necessarily. Just drift a couple balloons over, have an EMP on the west coast, east coast, grid is down. That's going to be huge for most of us who've never experienced life without electricity. Our society is going to start to crumble almost instantaneously after that. And then, if they want to watch ICBMs or anything else at sensitive sites, they can. But if we don't have electricity, how are we going to prevent any sort of like ground assault besides our geography?
The Navy is still out there. The U.S. Navy is still out there. If they really are that stupid to threaten the mainland United States, they'll have to get through the Navy first.
Yeah, not only that, but, I don't think we need anything other than our geography. Frankly, we're geographically uninvadable, not to mention we've got plenty of allies in the first world that, if China doesn't take out their electronics, then, we might not be able to get that, information to them right away, but as soon as they find out, they'll be here to help us if China comes knocking.
Yeah, plus there are reasons for China to avoid going to war right at this moment. The fact that they're still in kind of an economic crisis at the moment, not to mention a renewed COVID wave, they're still very much reliant on economic assistance from the outside world, including the United States and the West.
But it sounds like Winnie the Pooh is just continuing to try and brace himself for more and more sanctions. Like he's expecting them. So he's trying to make it so his economy doesn't really suffer, even if we sanction him to the max.
Still, I don't think China's at that point yet where it can reliably do anything without...
Maybe not yet, but it certainly seems like they're doing their damn best to get there.
China's end goal, obviously, is Taiwan. I don't think they'd launch a direct attack against the United States. But, our officials have already said they're kind of preparing for war against China by 25 to 27. So it's like, if they invade Taiwan, it sounds like we're probably going to get directly involved in that conflict with them. So I think right now they're the
testing the waters.
Testing our reactions on how we would react to certain scenarios. I think that was their goal here with this balloon, and honestly these balloons everywhere because they're in our allied countries as well. And I saw just today another interesting thing, which kind of actually goes with Matt's theory here, that China told the EU they should drop their calls for Ukraine's complete victory. Of course, on the outside, China's been back and forth with Russia and Ukraine, but now it seems they're pushing themselves towards Russia a lot more, which you're going to antagonize the West. Who else do you have to go to at that point? So
I could really see this going three different ways. All right, route one, Russia starts to lose ground significantly. They call China and okay, we need some serious help over here. China decides to join with Russia, and so now we're fighting a proxy war in Ukraine against NATO versus Russia and China, with them supplying weapons and other material as a testing site for their new shit, just like we're doing. Scenario 2, like I was saying, more balloons, one of them sneaks an EMP on us. Or scenario 3, which Jared just talked about. They just go over to Taiwan and what are you going to do about it?
Well, like I said, I highly doubt that China is actually going to stick out its neck for Russia. If anything, I think they're going to try and take advantage of Russia's failure in Ukraine to basically make Russia basically a vassal state to China, in a ways.
China wants to make Russia their bitch.
Yes, exactly.
There's already been reports that China has helped out Russia with the war. They've sent out supplies to them. It's not like they haven't done anything. They're not squeaky clean.
Yeah, I think China is a bit of a loophole in the sanctions that we've imposed against Russia as a result of their war in Ukraine.
What I can say for certain is we are definitely in a new Cold War. I'd say a second Cold War. You can also make the argument the first Cold War never really ended. It just kind of died down. Yeah, changed form or died down a little bit in the 90s, but it's definitely geared back up. So I know they haven't really come out and say that yet, but probably been the past couple of years we've been in this new Cold War type of format because, our relations with Russia are basically all-time low at this point, probably even worse than the Soviet Union in some aspects. And then, of course, China, after this balloon fiasco, in just recent events, it's gone downhill as well pretty severely. So it's going to be interesting to watch here these next coming years, what's going to happen, because, I mean, we're not getting along with them right now, that's for sure. I don't think that's going to be changing here within the next couple of years either. So
did Biden talk about any of this at the State of the Union last night? Of course not.
I mean, he mentioned G a little bit. He didn't really talk about the balloon too much.
The only time where he was like,
He was
what?
shouting, what? And then he did talk about Ukraine and Russia, but he said that we'll never stop our support for Ukraine until the war comes to an end. Like, we will always back up Ukraine.
I saw a clip which I assumed was related to this from the State of Union, where Biden was talking about China, and he was like, we will act to protect our country, and we did. But with the whole controversy that they took so long to respond, like, shouldn't they have responded immediately? And
Yeah, I think if there's going to be one positive outcome as a result of that, it's that NORAD's going to be basically going to be forced to get its shit together and probably won't let any of these further balloons in if they can help it.
We'll see. We'll see if more balloons come our way. I mean, F-22 got its first aerial kill, right?
Yeah, and it's actually a bit of an interesting one, and that's the highest altitude air-to-air kill in history thus far.
It's pretty funny. Get to paint a balloon on there, on the front of it, right? They could.
Yeah, in addition, the two F-22s that were dispatched, the call sign Frank 01 and 02, both launched from Langley Air Force Base, Virginia, joining up with a KC-135 tanker for aerial refueling. But the significant part of this is that the call sign Frank is in reference to Frank Luke Jr., who was an American fighter ace in World War I. He's also known as the Arizona Balloon Buster, as he shot down over 14 different German surveillance balloons.
Interesting little bit of trivia.
And I know a lot of people, especially those who are a little bit more familiar with aviation, especially you, Ashton, thought that they might have used an AMRAAM to shoot down the balloon at first.
Yeah, and we now know it was a Sidewinder that actually had a dummy warhead on it.
Yeah, it was an AIM-9X that had a dummy warhead, and a lot of people were saying, well, the balloon didn't have a heat signature, so how did that work?
Well, I think the AIM-9X actually has a imaging infrared, so it can basically see the target and the various different heat signatures to basically pick it out, and that's how I was able to track it. It's not like the early heat-seeking Sidewinders, which basically had to have this big juicy engine showing to
Or,
knock it on.
the forbidden snack.
The sun. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's cool to see how far some of our tech has come versus
Yeah.
like the 80s.
If only the reformers would just shut up when they say that technology is not necessary.
Yeah, exactly. Well, one thing for sure is we wrap it up here with that. They haven't officially said anything about what this balloon is. I think they're still
investigating.
Yeah, still investigating. So I assume hopefully we'll get something here, or they'll never tell us. That's the other option too. I mean, I assume we'll get something here within a couple weeks.
That's classified.
Classified. Yeah, I'll probably say that. Classified, I can't ever say.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing they've really put out is like it had a various sensor array attached to it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That's about it.
No more question.
Boy, I love when the government hides stuff from us. It's real helpful. It really inspires confidence and trust.
Oh yeah, the balloon had shit attached to it. All right, that's it. Goodbye.
Balloon had shit. See ya.
they don't want to sour their relationships with China's money.
True. 10% for the big guy.
Yeah.
Speaking of government, we had Biden's State of the Union yesterday. So did you guys get the chance to check it out?
A chance to fact check it. 95% of it was wrong.
I didn't watch it. Give me a quick rundown.
All right. So, I mean, actually, Biden was pretty energized. So his Adderall was definitely hitting that night. I'll give him that. He was shouting a lot.
That was probably his pro-vigil.
But a lot of these State of the Unions are pretty standard. I mean, the president will brag about what they've accomplished, in quotes, and then just some of the issues that we're facing right now. So the first half was a lot of bragging about the economy. Of course, we do have the lowest job unemployment ratings right now. Then there's just a lot of bragging about that. And then he went on to kind of attack Republicans. He said they're interested in taking away their Medicare, or cutting Medicare, and the Republicans kind of went berserk on him. Like, they started booing him, like he got rowdy in there. They started booing him and started shouting at him. And then I'll give him credit, like it was semi-clever. He's like, oh, so you guys don't want to cut Medicare then, so we're all in agreement. That's basically what he said about that. So I was like, okay, that's kind of clever, I guess.
Kinda, except for the part where he's like contradicting himself.
Straight up antagonizing the other camp.
Right, to get that
Yeah,
reaction.
so what's the first thing that he said? It's like, I inherited inflation. Like, inflation was 1.4% when Biden took office back in January 2021. He also said that wages are up. Wages are not up. They're lower today than they were in December 2019 in every industry except for retail, trade, leisure, and hospitality. 64% of Americans are now living paycheck to paycheck, near an all-time high, and this is according to a CNBC poll.
Yep.
Gas was $2.39 when Biden took office. Could reach $4 again here soon. Now, before we get a whole bunch of comments about, oh, the president doesn't control gas prices. Yeah, that's true. But oftentimes it does have some sort of correlation to policy implemented by the sitting president.
Right.
So by all those metrics, he just stood up there and lied to the American people and essentially said, oh yeah, you guys aren't going through anything. What was that line you said last night, Jared? It's like, I grew up like just like you guys there.
I grew up in the middle class, raised by my dad, staring at the walls at night, staring at the ceiling. God.
This dude is so far gone from reality.
Well, yeah, I mean, we know that based on how he's talking about spending money on infrastructure. Dude, what infrastructure? Eddie, you've lived in a few different countries. Why don't you tell us like how America's infrastructure today compares to the infrastructure of the other countries you've lived in?
It's hard to say because I was a kid for most of that time. So, I mean, everyone knows the healthcare here sucks. Like, in other countries, sure, the taxes are much higher, but you actually get what you pay for. In the U.S., at least from my experience, we're paying all these taxes, and then we have to pay all these insurance companies, and you're not even getting your money's worth.
Yeah, I forget who said it, but it was kind of funny. They said the United States is just 50 third world countries packed into one. That's kind of true, especially when you look at like California, their whole mess out there.
Yeah,
the
for
whole
sure.
camps of homeless people and like all the drug abusers out on the street. It's like, really? This is the pinnacle of America? I don't think so.
Right, but I mean, even just looking at stuff like roads and like public transit, like you go to Europe, you can take a train from Germany to Italy, no problem, just make it a day trip. Here, like if I want to take a train from Cincinnati to Chicago, I'd first have to drive an hour to Cincinnati, catch the train that only comes at 1:41 a.m., and then it takes 9 hours to get to Chicago. Or I could just leave at a normal time of day and drive 6 hours there. It's pathetic.
I will say this, I mean, Europe has the advantage where a lot of like villages, towns are a lot closer together. I mean, that's why people in Europe tend to be a lot less obese compared to here because they can walk everywhere and bike.
Yes, but at the same time, this might open a whole nother can of worms for another podcast. But like their food industry is so much more regulated than ours.
Yeah, and that's true as well.
And we have so many things that should not be touching our food here in the U.S. But that's a topic for a whole nother episode.
And I mean, I do think like we depended on the railroads at one point, and once Eisenhower's really the one who pushed for the national highways, which of course gave us a lot of benefit, connected all the cities together. Railroads took a lot of time to travel to places, but make the argument it was efficient. You're right. I mean, geographical differences. We're a lot more spread out and stuff compared to Europe. Can't blame Biden for, I don't think, specifically.
Well, I think you maybe can a little bit because he's touted as the Amtrak president. He loves the rail lines or whatever, but then you saw what happened when those rail workers were trying to go on strike because they had terrible working conditions.
Or you get what happened to New Palestine in Ohio with the rail lines, transporting all this hazmat material, and it leaks because they didn't fix the axle on one of the train cars because the railroad industry is notorious for, ignoring safety concerns. And then you just have this huge boxcar blow up, and that whole event happened.
Yeah, that was a whole fiasco entirely. It is hypocritical, as you said. Especially just kind of disgusted with how the whole rail strike played out. Everything just straight up saying, hey, you can't go on strike or else you're fired. And so that was a disaster. A couple things he said as well. Stuff we've been saying is that, he wants to tax, I think it's a common Democrat talking point though, that he wants to tax the big billionaire corporations and help promote the middle class a bit more.
Why do you tax all the money that China's giving to us?
Yeah, but at the
We
same
should probably get rid of the national deficit with them out there pouring in.
Right. it's like at the same time, is that actually going to happen? 10% for the big guy. I mean, it sounds nice, like you're saying that. It's like, yeah, we agree with that. We want to see these big monopolies get their fair share, but that's not actually happening is the problem.
Aren't some of these big companies kind of guilty of tax evasion in ways?
Tax evasion, profiting, gouging prices, especially gas companies.
Everything.
Yeah, exactly.
And so if you're really going to not take these big monopolies down a couple pegs, you need to clamp down on all of that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he says he's doing that.
But I don't see it happening.
Yeah.
He says a lot of stuff.
This is a big problem in our modern society, that everyone says something and does something else, whether it's the politicians who everyone knows are liars, or these corporations who love to seem so righteous and supporting all these causes, but then at the same time their products are being made by children and sweatshops, and their products use all these chemicals that are toxic to us, and then they go ahead and lobby to not ban those products, those chemicals, so they can make it cheaper. It's like,
yeah, it's ridiculous, man.
Yeah, exactly, Eddie. Like, I mean, saying all these good things, I mean, people like slurp that up. And it's like, oh, yeah, she's doing that. But then you realize how, hey, they don't actually look into it. It's good sound bites. But then when you actually go deeper and seeing if he's actually doing anything, yeah, as you said, usually it's the reverse that's happening.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, corporations do this kind of stuff all the time. I mean, you look at, like, during Pride Month, they all change their profile pictures to be rainbow. But then you look at, like, the Middle Eastern social media accounts for these companies, and it's just normal, just Tuesday.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, if you're going to stand for something, maybe actually stand for it. Don't just do this performative activism to get people on your side.
Black History Month right now, so you see all those corporations are like, oh, hey, and after that, we're never going to talk about you until next year.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Biden said, I found this quote very funny. Biden said, fighting for the sake of fighting, power for the sake of power, conflict for the sake of conflict gets us nowhere. And I was like, hey, yeah, I agree. But don't you feel a little silly saying that? Don't you feel a little stupid? Don't you feel a little ashamed? Mm-hmm. It's so deeply ironic.
Right. It's like, dude, you're the one who like fueled all those booing, all that booing at the State of the Union.
Right.
Like, come on, man. Wait, Eddie, where are you from? I meant to ask you this before. So what countries did you live in?
Well, my family's from Venezuela, but I've lived in a bunch of countries. I was born in Scotland, then I moved to Azerbaijan, which is close to Russia. Then I moved to the United Arab Emirates. Then I moved to Italy. Then I moved back to the United Arab Emirates, which, by the way, is where Dubai is. And now I'm in the U.S.
So which place was your favorite?
Definitely Italy.
I was going to say, Italy sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just prefer the European culture personally. Also, in Italy, I lived there for 3 years, and I learned Italian in 3 years, no problem. But in the United Arab Emirates, I lived there for almost 7 years total, and I know nothing of Arabic, almost nothing.
Wow.
Damn. Well, that's crazy though. So how long have you lived here in Florida?
Right now, almost 6 years, I think.
So you were here for COVID and everything else.
Yeah. Also related to the State of Union, Biden was like so proud saying that 1.7 trillion of the deficit was reduced.
Oh, yeah.
But wasn't that due to the COVID relief spending that he wasn't even responsible for?
Right.
I'm pretty sure his spending has even increased.
Yeah. The deficit, okay, it is true the deficit did decrease, but at the same time, as you said, I mean, there's other factors at play for that. Like I said, it sounds good. People will eat that up, but when you go deeper into it, which unfortunately most people don't really do that or take the time to do that, it's like, oh, well, that was a lie.
Everyone was just clapping, but they just clapped after every other sentence, and they didn't do anything else. Barely any contribution.
That's true. It's always one big circle jerk in the State of the Union. I mean, it's kind of funny having the Republicans in there as well. I mean, last year it was just like one big, because obviously the Dems were in control of the House too.
And of course, no one can miss the fact that Joe Biden walked right up to Kamala Harris's husband, just right on the lips.
I have to look into that, because like I swear it was
No, dude, go
perspective,
look at the
I'm
video.
gonna look at this again.
No way.
I don't think
Yeah.
Can't be real.
That can't be real.
Dark
I'm pretty
red.
sure I'm pretty sure it's a cheat kiss. Just
I don't care. She was booking it over to like visit him, regardless. So it looks like we have a bunch of swingers in the White House.
well, I mean, Pratt was a retirement home at the Pratt.
Swingers in the retirement home. 1610.
Didn't you look like all of them? Like half of them were above the age of 60. It's like, gee.
Most of Congress is a retirement home
I
too.
know.
Like, God, can we please have people under like 45 in there?
Right. It's ridiculous at this point. Maybe someday that'll change, but he hasn't announced yet that he's running for president, but it sounds like he probably will soon.
Oh, Jesus.
He's going to be 86 by the end of it, so...
What point was I just making, Jared?
Right. It's like, come on. I mean, and then the rest of it, kind of the usual stuff I come to expect with these things. I mean, just staying their agenda, the Democrat agenda, hey, abortion, and then I know one thing.
Well, I take that back. I would rather have Joe Biden than Justin Trudeau.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
So just because someone's young doesn't always mean they're better.
True.
I mean, at least Biden can't think too hard about his policies, so nothing really gets done.
Very true. I know, of course, he said his statement banning assault weapons, which, I mean, another soundbite that's probably never going to happen because they can't really define what an assault weapon is.
There is
so.
no such thing as an assault weapon.
Exactly. So I don't know how.
Oh, but they'll
doing that
try.
definition.
But, I mean, look at Illinois, right? Where they passed that state law banning semi-automatic weapons. Just about every single sheriff in the respective counties in Illinois said, we're not enforcing that. And, yeah, you can keep them. We're not doing anything about it. And that's in Illinois. That's a pretty blue state when you look at it.
Right.
You try and pass that anywhere else.
It's not going to get any traction.
No.
Exactly. It's just a talking point. He probably knows this will never actually go anywhere. So
As Cameron said, virtue signaling at its finest.
yeah.
I also think there's something to be said for cops in local municipalities not enforcing laws that they disagree with. I mean, I know it's in vogue to hate the police right now, and it's true, they do a lot of bad, questionable stuff. We need to hold them accountable, but by that same token, we also got to give due praise when they do stuff like not enforcing unjust laws, in my opinion.
What did Thomas Jefferson say, Jared?
If a law is unjust, a man is not only right to disobey it, he is obligated to do so.
Precisely. Notice that term, obligated to do so. That's not saying, oh, stand by and just be like, that's a bad law, but continue and follow it. It's, that's a bad law. I will not abide by it. And that is your duty to not do so.
Obligated to disobey that law.
Back then, these dudes had balls. Like,
Oh,
just
yeah.
say, that's not my law. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, everyone loves to say, oh yeah, I agree with this. I disagree with this. And then they don't do anything about it.
Very true.
I think we have to learn from the French. When they protest, stuff gets done.
Yeah, when the French when the French have
The
had it with
revolution.
something, they've had it. And they make it known. They're not shy about it.
We need to get some of that action in here.
Hear the CIA coming right now. All right, well,
Put that soup.
There you go, I'm just a guest here.
don't worry. Say we don't know. We don't know nothing. All right, well, anybody else have something to say about the State of the Union last night?
Yeah.
I hate the New World Order.
I think the New World Order sucks.
Back on that rant once again.
This is America.
I think something else I kind of
I
wanted
agree.
to touch on was Biden's remarks regarding China and how he says that at the State of the Union, I think one of the highlights you mentioned was off channel was where was it here?
Yeah, he still wanted to have relations with China. Of course, if they push him, that's when they'll be forced to act, basically.
Yeah, except here's the thing though. Something that I think we all should realize when it comes to trying to do business with China to keep them in check. This doesn't fucking work. We never really should have opened up our relationships with the CCP to begin with.
I think Nixon made a mistake.
Absolutely. Kissinger and Nixon made a pretty big mistake in trying to open up relations with the CCP.
What do you think about the secret CCP law enforcement stations in New York?
That's a whole nother violation of international law that China should be held accountable for.
Well, see, the Chinese, they just keep doing all this stuff. TikTok, spying on American citizens. having their own police stations in the U.S. that are underground, flying balloons over us. When is enough enough?
Yeah, we really should start actually punishing them for these sorts of insurrections.
Oh no, 3 suns just landed on the mainland of China. Wonder how that happened. Maybe they'll learn their lesson.
Or finally pull the damn plug and stop giving them our money, stop giving them our intellectual property, start actually treating them like a pariah state.
We're doing it with Russia, but you can make the argument we should have done that way before they invaded.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's time to start doing this with China before.
Or how about
we do
this? How about we stand on our goddamn American principles for once and stop kowtowing to everyone who wants to do us harm?
Exactly. It's time to show these people the true American spirit.
That's what Biden was saying, America first.
Except I don't think he's really doing a true American spirit.
He's like, American first, but 10% for the big guy. After my 10%,
he's more
then
like
America
60%
first.
for the big guy. He doesn't give a flying fuck about anything else.
America first after I give my 60%. Then we'll
America first, after Russia, after China, after Ukraine, after the entire European Union, after NATO, after everyone in Congress, after everyone in the Senate, and then after Bo and whoever fuck else he gives money to.
my billionaire friends.
Oh yeah, then you have that. So we're
Alright.
like in the 102nd spot.
Basically. All right, well, Eddie, if you want to take over here, just explain what you have to talk about with sleep therapy, because I'm always looking for better ways to get more sleep.
Yeah, I know you did a little of that non-sleep deep rest and sleep hygiene stuff that we talked about in, I think it was our first or second show?
I think it was our third.
Third, yeah.
Third. So I know you started doing some of that stuff. You want to tell us about your experience with that?
Yes, so I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't fully consistent as much as I tried, and it happened in a busy moment for my life. And so I will say, even though I was inconsistent and I didn't do it as much as I would like, I could definitely notice improvements even quite soon since I began. Even though I'll sleep, let's say some nights I'll sleep at 3 a.m., other nights I'll sleep at 12 a.m. I was going to say I'd sleep at 10 p.m., but that's a lie. Even as inconsistently as I go to bed, I do tend to wake up at the same time without an alarm. And every time I go out to the sun in the morning, I always feel a lot more energized. I also notice like the dark spots below my eyes, they just look better. My face looks a bit more plump, I guess. The NSDR, I usually tend to do it at night and like try to get me to sleep. And I've heard from someone else, I forgot who it was, but to prepare to sleep, actually lay on the floor instead of your bed first, and which I've done it a few times, and it relaxes you in a different way, because when you're within your bed, it's kind of holding you up in a, I don't know how to explain it, but it's different than in the ground. And so like the last time I tried it, I literally dozed off in the ground by accident. So I mean, I've always had trouble sleeping. It would take me hours to fall asleep, so that's a pretty great sign. Have you guys tried it?
I have not personally. Have you, Matthew?
The NSDR?
Yeah, you've done that.
Yeah, I do that all the time. It's great.
You're still doing first light and everything?
Not so much
Yeah.
morning light viewing, because my schedule changed. And so now I usually wake up, especially like Tuesdays and Thursdays, go to the gym, get like a solid hour workout in. Then I try and spend some quality time in like the sauna and wake up that way.
Well, we were supposed to do an update on the first morning light. Never went around, never came back to that.
Yeah, we did.
Well, no, we never
I
came
was
back
waiting
to
for
it.
that, guys. What happened?
I know.
Oh, yeah, well,
Whoops.
we did it for quite a while, and it went great.
I did it for the first week, and I felt great during it. You know, unfortunately, the next week, some stuff happened, and I slipped out of that schedule. But yeah, it was great. And the NSDR stuff, like you, Eddie, I use that to help myself fall asleep at night a lot of the time, and it works wonders.
Yeah, I also got to try it out for a bit of a week, though. I guess kind of like Eddie, I tend to be a bit inconsistent because my work schedule is a bit inconsistent as I'm working part-time. Sometimes I'm often working have to get to work well before the sun even starts to rise, so...
Yeah, that's a lot of the common theme is like having a busy schedule definitely does not help.
Yeah, but every time I do actually get a chance to do it, man oh man, does it really help out.
The other consideration is it is the middle of winter here in Ohio.
Yeah.
And so even though you might wake up and go do it, a lot of the time I don't have the 45 minutes to wait because it's super cloudy out. Yeah, 20 degrees.
There was like a week or two in January. I mean, it felt like the whole month of January, really, like just cloudy every day, no sun. It was rough getting up in the morning.
But as soon as spring rolls around and we have more consistent light, I'm going to be out there each day for the next 10 months until probably November when it starts getting cloudy again.
Like myself, I probably don't get enough sleep. I mean, when I actually go to bed, I fall asleep pretty easily, and I'm pretty much knocked out. It takes a lot to actually wake me up. You were playing guitar last night, and I didn't hear it at all from my room. So there's times where they've knocked on my door before, and I'm still knocked out. Never even heard it.
Yeah, dude, at the old place, I remember my other roommate and I, one of the other guys moved out, and so we switched rooms. We moved all of our stuff from one room to another room. And Jared was just zonked. And we're moving furniture, we're drilling stuff in. Next morning, it's huh? And had no idea that we had switched our rooms. And this was from 1 to 3:30 in the morning.
Yep.
Meanwhile, I can hear Jared's alarm when it goes off in the morning through 2 sets of doors and 2 walls. And then hear him walking around and get up and do his entire morning routine.
You're like a pin drop in the morning. I swear.
Honestly, I'm pretty much similar to what Matt is in terms of how I sleep.
Yeah, Jared breathed wrong from 3 rooms across. I'm I'm awake. All right, well, there we go.
Doesn't take much to wake me up either, as I'm a pretty light sleeper. Be it a cat pawing at the door, some footsteps out in the hallways, or pretty much any sort of unusual noise, I guess you could say, and I'm up trying to figure out what's going on, what's causing that, and
yeah, I'm also super sensitive to light. So my bedroom has to be completely dark. I've taped off every single little light source light on my light switch, the LED thing on my computer, on my speakers, on my monitors. Any small piece of light that is in my room will drive me nuts.
Yeah, same here. I usually try to shut all that off before I go to bed.
I'm talking about even little indicator light on a TV or monitor.
Oh.
The little 0.5 millimeter by 0.5 millimeter square thing. Yeah, keeps me up.
You're just fucked.
Something like that.
I sleep with a fan though, so Eddie, I'm not sure if you sleep or if you guys sleep with ambient noise in the background, but I mean, my fan kind of sounds like a rotor, to be honest. It's pretty powerful. It's pretty loud, I should say.
Loss from listening to that.
It's not that loud. I mean,
it's loud.
It's not that loud, but
yeah, it is.
So I've slept my whole life with a fan, so I could still fall asleep without any background noise, but I'm definitely a lot more sensitive to little movements like strange noises, house settling and stuff. So I mean, Eddie, probably you guys as well. I mean, sleeping with ambient noises definitely helped. I think at least me.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I've heard that ambient noise helps a lot. I've heard stories of people who used to live in a loud neighborhood, maybe a dangerous neighborhood, and they'd hear cars driving, gunshots, and police sirens. And when they moved to a more quiet neighborhood, they needed to listen to some sort of audio similar to that to fall asleep. And personally, for me, I also struggle a lot with any noise or the voices in my head. They keep me up at night. But I think another thing that is important is breathing through your nose instead of your mouth. Mouth breathing will make you snore, and it has a lot of negative effects. Personally, I sometimes tape my mouth during sleep to make sure I breathe through my nose.
Yeah, I do the same thing on occasion. And in fact, I tried to get Jared into it. He was like, source? What source do you have for that? Yeah, that's not clinical, bro. It's any thing that is not peer reviewed with 200 citations. Jared's that's
Source?
false information. Even if it's anecdotal, it's dude, just try it. He's no.
Need a source on that claim right there.
Just try it. There's your source. If you sleep better afterwards, and it's well, there you go. If you don't, then
breathers
don't try
lobbied against those studies.
Yeah.
Like I say, I'm a big mouth breather myself.
Yeah, that's why you constantly get cavities too.
No, I don't have any cavities. What are you talking about? I went to the dentist and said no cavities.
Yeah, unlike last time.
Okay, I wasn't taking care of my teeth properly, but now I got my electric toothbrush changed
Fact
again.
checker say this is false.
Shit.
Yeah, the fact that you have an electric toothbrush.
Don't you use one?
Yes.
Yeah, they're way better than regular.
I mean, it depends. Pros and cons.
Source?
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So I guess you could make the argument that NSDR is kind of like a form of meditation. And I know you also mentioned to me before the show you'd like to talk a little about just meditation and self-improvement in general. So what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, personally, I've been really focused on maximizing all aspects of my life. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so if I'm not perfect, I'll kill myself shortly. But seriously, out of all the self-improvement advice I've heard, meditation has been the most helpful for me personally. So a lot of people tend to get stuck in their head. They get intrusive thoughts and they get controlled by their emotions, and they think that's just the way they are. They think that's normal. But meditation, a lot of people think you have to clear your mind, but it's not about clearing your mind. It's about feeling those thoughts, feeling those emotions, but not acting on them. If you get a thought and then you realize you got the thought and you stop contributing to that thought, then you were done the action of meditation. And so what this does is it starts to allow you to just get over the thoughts, get over the emotions. If you feel tired and you decide, because you feel tired, I'm not going to go to the gym, then you're reinforcing that action in your brain. You're creating a compulsion. Every time I feel tired, I'm not going to take action. It will take time. It'll take a lot of time and effort to break away these compulsions. But personally for me, I try to never give myself an excuse to miss the gym, for example. So if I'm tired, even if I don't maybe do the full workout because I'm genuinely physically tired, at least I went and at least I did something. Because a lot of people are like, oh, I'm not motivated, or I don't have the energy. But for me personally, I've noticed that momentum is your motivation. Once you keep doing it over and over and over again, it's just normal to you. And so once you slip up, it's going to be way easier to slip up again. So you never want to slip up. And I mean, of course, you're going to slip up a few times here and there. But as long as it's genuinely due to factors you had no control over, like, you had something at work or you had some family stuff, it's all right. It wasn't your fault, really. But now you have to be extra discipline to make sure that you don't slip up again. It's too easy to just say one more day, the next day, and then it's a whole month later.
Yeah, I mean, I have experience with that myself, like just with working out and stuff. I've been keeping pretty consistent with it these past 6 or so weeks, and it's helped a lot. Every other time I've tried working out, I've missed a day, and then it's like, I'll do it the next time, and then I don't. It's like, I'll do it the day after that, and I don't. And then it next week I'll get into it. No. Next month I'll get into it. No. And then at that point it's like, I'm not even doing it anymore. It's like you said, momentum is motivation. Keep at it. Keep consistent with it. It helps. It works.
I concur with that. I definitely concur. I think keeping a schedule, it's good to break away from itineraries every once in a while. I think a little unpredictability can definitely...
Jared, you are allergic to unpredictability.
Exactly. Probably need more unpredictability, but I think schedules definitely help keeping on track. Like, I try to set times when I'm going to the gym every day. And
just so people know, Jared, you set a schedule to charge your toothbrush. That is down to the detail of how you operate.
Yeah.
Anytime I ask you to do something, even somewhat last minute, because it's he doesn't know how to process it. So you need to get out there and just go wing it once in a while.
You're right. Unpredictability is important. Making memories, doing something a little bit different, but keeping schedules are also very important too. Setting yourself the tasks, giving yourself time slots. I think set a certain time every day to go to the gym, 4 to 5 o'clock. I'm going to go to the gym and do it. And if you miss a day, I'm going to do a home workout. Better than nothing, I'd say.
Exactly. I tell a lot of people, instead of starting, a lot of people want to start everything perfectly, but I think it's more important to take action. During COVID, I personally fell off of working out because of the excuse, I'll do it the next day. I'll do it the next day. And then it was months, and I would do it here and there, but after a year of pure consistency, so what I did to start again was, instead of going for full workout, I said, all right, let me at least try to do as many push-ups as I can to failure every day. And I was like surprised to notice, like when I first started, I felt so weak. I could only do like 7 or 8 proper push-ups in a row before I failed. But after only 2 months, I can now do 50 push-ups in a row until I fail around that area. So it shows like small, consistent actions will have great effects over time. And now I'm back to being consistent at the gym. So just start small, keep adding a little bit more, and eventually you'll get there.
Yeah, exactly. It's great advice. Similar story here where I stopped going once COVID hit. I mean, all the gyms were closed anyways, and I just didn't fall back into it when things opened back up. Finally got back into it back in the summer of 21, and then felt great after that because I think my mental health, I feel like, and this could be a whole episode now. I kind of talked about this a little bit in the last episode about societal change in 2020 with the shutdowns, but my mental health definitely fell off, I think, during the lockdowns and everything else, and getting back into it to the gym about a year later definitely helped improve that immensely. So definitely also interesting topic, I think, for next time too, if we have nothing else.
Yeah, I think the pandemic actually accelerated and showed more extreme versions of our current societal problems and psychological problems. That's definitely something that would make for a very interesting discussion. The last thing I wanted to mention is with meditation. I feel like everyone has their vice, their addiction. Personally, there was a period of my life where I struggled a lot with, let's say, some sinful content, and it took me like years to make any progress with that until I started to meditate. And soon after I started to meditate consistently, it's like, you get the thoughts of doing the unholy action, and now you're able to, you get the thought, but it doesn't affect you. You've reinforced the behavior. It's not going to take control of you. And so I think this applies to everything, really. If you get too emotional and you feel like you lost control of your body, it's not that you lost control. It's that your body is used to acting that way with that feeling. But if you make the effort to act differently, then eventually the emotion comes and it's not going to affect you. You can think and act rationally. Kind of off topic, but I recently met someone who's in the film industry, and he told me how a lot of actors and those celebrities are like secretly conservative, but obviously for the media, they either they don't talk about politics or they just lie about their beliefs. Just shows how I feel like everyone is putting up a farce, a facade, and it's gotten to the point where they're all hiding behind this wall of lies, and we're probably more similar than we'd like to admit. Like I've personally, I love dark humor, and so I always try to sneak in some darker humor here and there. And a lot of these people act, right? Just, oh, you can't joke about that. But then when I say those jokes, they will laugh, and they're fine with it. So it's just how everyone is scared to really be themselves, and they have to put up this facade until someone breaks it away.
Yeah, it's like social conditioning in a way.
All goes back to that performative activism,
All right, well, thank you, Eddie, for coming on to the show. Really insightful things that you said. Got me thinking a lot. I definitely got to start meditating more myself. Reflecting is always a good thing. Just your day, weeks, years. So thank you again for coming on, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.